Any company that wants to have a place in customers' brains, any chance of having word of mouth, needs to pick something specific at a functional level that their product does.
Anthony Pierri is the co-founder of FletchPMM, a product marketing consultancy that helps B2B tech startups discover their ideal product positioning and bring it to life on a newly crafted homepage.
Becoming productized potentially can open up the door a lot more because you become so much more referable.
Since Fletch started, Anthony and his partner Rob Kaminski have worked with over 400 venture-backed startups.
We do about $1.5 million a year in revenue at probably around 60% margin or so.
In today's episode, we dive into the nitty-gritty of positioning, how to stand out by actually showing your prices publicly, and how productizing your business and being super specific can help you not only grow, but save you a lot of headache and time.
You have to find an underserved group of people and say, I'm going to go build a business there. And the only weapon that startups have against the big companies is that they can focus on these smaller market opportunities that a big company just doesn't care to go after.
Before we start, I'm Gabe Marusca, and I would like to thank you for listening to the episodes and trying to learn something that you can apply in your business right away. If you enjoy it and you find it helpful, it would mean the world to me if you can subscribe and leave a comment down below in order to support the show. Thank you so much and enjoy. Anthony, welcome to Authority in the Wild.
Great to be here. Thanks so much for having me.
My pleasure, and I'll dive straight into it. You're very vocal about showing prices up front. Why?
Yeah, that's it depends if you're talking about consultancies or product companies. I think for both, I am usually a proponent of showing it. I have probably stronger opinions on the consultancy side that I think it just makes you very difficult to buy when people have no idea what price range you're even in. So for us, we want to have the right fit people be reaching out to us at a consistent cadence. And so part of that is knowing that they would be okay paying what we charge. And so we think putting prices front and center makes a really big difference on that. And we actually went as far to put the pricing of our service in the first scroll of the website. So, the website hero, we have the prices even in there, which is pretty much unheard of in consulting worlds. And we posted about it on LinkedIn. We challenged other consultants and service providers and agencies to do the same. And a bunch of people did. And we just think it goes a long way in creating transparency. And it makes it so you don't waste their time for people who go through your whole sales process who could have never afforded you, and vice versa, right? It doesn't waste your time that you're having to meet with all these different people and pitch people who don't actually want to buy the service or couldn't buy the service. So for us, it's been a big improvement. People who get on the calls already know what we charge and are okay with paying it usually, and they're trying to decide if this is a good fit or not, but the price is not an element that they're worried about at that point because they've already mentally prepared for it. And I think the pushback of people who want to keep it hidden is they think, well, I could probably squeeze some more money out of folks. If I can feel out how much they're willing to pay for my service, maybe I could pitch a bigger price. But we think whatever additional money you get from doing it that way, you will lose in the long run because you will miss out on so many clients, waste so much time. Your sales process gets so bogged down. So we think the trade-off, we think you end up making more money by showing it and having standard pricing. And there's ways to do it where you can still have tiers, right? Like we do a version of the value-based pricing, which is we will price clients differently depending on how big they are, but we're very upfront about it. We say, if you're an early stage company and you want to work with us and you're making less than $1 million a year, we're not going to charge you the same amount as a company that works with us that's a Fortune 500 that is making many, many billions or something like that. It doesn't make sense to us. The complexity of the bigger company is going to be a lot higher. The potential impact and value from a revenue perspective will be a lot higher. So we'll price higher. And so you can be open and transparent about this. It doesn't have to be some sort of secretive thing you do behind the scenes where it's like, well, no, I'm trying to price the client, but I don't want anyone to know what I charge this person. It's like, no, you can still do it in a public facing way.
And what's the best practice around it? Like to put something like pricing starting at or engagement starting at, and based on that, depending on the level of engagement that you have with the particular client, you charge accordingly, or how you approach it?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head, right? There's a consulting, or you could call them an agency called Refine Labs. There's a guy named Chris Walker who's big on LinkedIn. I saw him doing this like years ago, right? And they're a big high ticket agency that works with massive companies, huge, expensive contracts, something like 20K a month. I can't remember, but it's like people have to be spending a lot of money to work with them. And so they've had public pricing for years, right? Starting at blank, and it just puts you in the ballpark. And then I think you can figure out, okay, well, is this getting customized at all or not, and adjust it from there. But give people a reference point, right? Like if you're going to charge 20K a month, don't hide that and be like, oh, it's some amount of money, because you will get people who would never in a million years dream of paying, 20K a month, wasting time on your sales folks, right? That they have to meet with these people, figure out, oh, is this person qualified? You spend so much time and energy just for that tiny little extra money you could potentially squeeze out of people. It just doesn't feel like it's worth it.
Yeah, and another argument people bring when they don't show their pricing is the fact that, oh, I'm not maybe confident enough to charge my worth, and I want to provide so much value in the Zoom call, discovery call, whatever you call it, in order for them to understand why I'm charging this much. How you will address that?
Yeah, I mean, there's two places where you can prove that you're going to provide value. One is in the sales process, and one is long before someone ever books a call with you, through your LinkedIn posts, your content, your thought leadership. We just think it should happen there, because if you have to do it all during the sales process, it's not the most conducive environment to be proving that you can provide value, because you're in an active sales negotiation. That's just not a great place to instill trust and all that stuff, because they know you're trying to sell them. So for us, we're like, we do everything out in the open. We share our frameworks publicly. We share exactly what we're going to do on the sessions. All the deliverables are clearly spelled out on our homepage. You can look at them. They're real examples from real companies. We have long videos walking through exactly how the process works, what you get. We have tons of testimonials. We have about 100 before and after case studies with companies in all sorts of different industries. So we try to just front load, share as much of it as possible, so that by the time someone books a call, they're kind of already bought in. We don't need to convince them in that moment. But most people don't do it that way. They are custom consultants who work with anyone. And so they can't really do that. They have to keep it open and broad by nature. So they can really only get people from their network to come and work with them. And the problem with people from your network is, again, they don't know much about you. They don't know what you do. So you do have to do a lot of it in the sales process, which is just not great. So we always think you can create that trust other places. And then by the time they reach your website, they get on the call with you, you could just be very honest, like, yep, here it is exactly what it looks like. And people can decide if they want it or not.
Absolutely. And from what you're sharing, it's basically you need to have a level of productization in your offer. Otherwise, it's so hard to like create custom solution for every single person that knocks on your door. How much of what you do is based on frameworks and how much it's custom?
We do essentially all productized. So we have basically no custom offers at all. And we really only have one offer. So we do a 2-week sprint with our clients that is focused on helping them figure out their product positioning. That's all during week 1. And then the second week is translating that positioning strategy into a rewritten homepage. So it's basically the same with every client. We've done it about 500 times, and we just slowly have been increasing prices over time to get more money out of it. We're bringing in more people to help run these sprints. And so it's much easier, in our opinion, to scale it that way, in a healthy way, right? Because when you do everything custom, the way that you scale is you land a bigger client, you have to hire people to service the client. It's this never ending treadmill, because when that client ends, you got to find another client equally as big who needs all those people. But since it was custom, they likely will need people with different expertise than the first group, right? Because if you're doing, let's say, website design or app development or something like that, great. So you got all these developers who know this specific language for this big project. Can you find another person who needs that same mix of developers with their skill sets? Maybe, maybe not. So it gets worse as you scale with the custom agencies, because everything is always different. And so people end up going on the bench. There's a lot of margin that you lose. You have to hire more middle managers, so people to just coordinate, like account manager type stuff too. So for us, we're like, if we can keep the offer really, really simple, the same every time, that helps make it easy to buy, easy to sell, easy to refer, easy to scale. And for us, over time, we get so much more efficient at it because it's the same, but we also get better outcomes for the client because we're getting better and better and better at what we do from all the reps. So the time we spend per project might actually go down over time, but the value we're providing is going up and we could charge more. So the more we do, the higher the margin gets, which is very, very different than most people in the agency world.
Yeah, I wish I knew this when I started, because I started as a graphic designer, then web designer, then kind of play agency before switching to consulting and focus on productizing my offering. And I know that through this process, I faced some roadblocks. And one of them was the fact that, wait, if I just have this quote unquote small offer, just fixing this small problem, how can I ever be fully booked? Or how can I ever not chase clients all the time? If someone is still there in that situation, how you'll advise them to go about it?
Yeah, it's really funny because it's sort of a chicken and the egg problem. In some ways, you've hit the nail on the head. You need more clients if you're going to do a productized business. But I will caveat that it's all related to your own personal goals, right? If you want to make, let's say, $150,000 a year and you're selling, let's say, a $10,000 productized offer, you need 15 clients in a year. That might feel like a lot, especially if you're someone who's like, well, I came from a retainer world. I had 4 big clients that each pay me X amount of money, per month. These are different types of businesses. The productized one, you really are running a business. It's not a consult like a freelancer kind of like it almost like when you have 3 big clients who pay you retainer, it's closer to just having 3 part-time jobs, which is like that's fine if you want to do that. You want to have 3 bosses, 3 part-time jobs. Okay, good for you, right? But if you want to make a business that you're not beholden to anyone, that there's no client who can demand anything of you because you're one of many. If I lose you as a client, so be it. You could say no to people, all that stuff. You do have to solve the distribution problem. Now, the funny thing is, like I was saying, it's the chicken and the egg. Is when people coming from the retainer side, they think it's so hard to get clients because I just have to network like crazy. But becoming productized potentially can open up the door a lot more because you become so much more referable. But at the same time, it also creates a flywheel for you to share content, expertise about what you're actually providing. So for us, our big content flywheel is running the same type of sprint with every single company and having all these learnings and then translating those learnings into LinkedIn posts where we can deliver value at a really consistent clip. So you probably will have to do some form of thought leadership, well, whether it's podcast appearances or writing a book or whatever. But the fact that you are productized gives you the ammo to be able to actually do that, where a custom consultancy can't really do thought leadership much because what are they going to write about? It's always different. It's every single client would care about different things. You can't get any sense of repeatability in the content or the types of topics you're writing about because it's always going to be different. So if you can hone in on an area and start sharing the insights, like there's a guy named Drew McClellan. He had this podcast called Building a Better Agency. And he had this quote that was so simple, but very, very profound. He said, if you want to sell an expertise, like if you want to have an expertise based business, you have to publicly demonstrate that you have the expertise. And so I was like, oh, that's so obvious, but you don't think about it that way because every consultant's like, well, I don't want to share any of my stuff, right? That's my secret sauce. But then no one's going to know that you're trustworthy. So if you focus in, if you productize, if you pick a niche, that creates a way to create content. But again, someone, whether it's you or someone you hire, needs to be able to consistently put out content to be able to get more clients to fill this whole thing. So they work together, but you can't discount it that you probably will need to do some type of content and figure out how to get good results from that.
And I want if there is a way to get the best from both worlds, best from the productization side and best from retention. I think I found a solution since I'm doing exactly that. Like I have a handful of clients that I have a retainer with, but my offer is productized. Basically, we go through 3 stages: acquisition, retention, operations. And in each one, we have frameworks and standardized approaches and so on. But they stay with us for longer. And in the same time, we kind of solve the big three problems a business usually have. And at the same time, there are some indeed moving pieces because especially when it comes to acquisition, some have different approaches. Some use a lot building a personal brand and so on. Others have different approaches, and based on their skills and their expertise, we try to work implement what works best for them. How you'll see that, like, since indeed I still have some problems where like I maybe need to hire a contractor for that, or finding different approaches based on their strengths and weaknesses and so on, especially around acquisition. After that, it's quite easy, retention and operations, but especially around acquisition, I personally face this challenge, and others that are having this approach face as well. It's possible to productize acquisition entirely, or
Yeah, good. That's a great question. And I think productization is a sliding scale of how productized something really is, right? So, to give you an example, our sprint is 2 weeks. It lasts 2 weeks. It has 4 live calls. There are 3 of them. The first one is always on Monday. The second one is always on Wednesday. The third one's always on Thursday. They're each 75 minutes in length. There are very specific things we do on those 3 75-minute calls. The prep looks the same for every client going in. Like we have a set audit process that we do for every single client. It takes about roughly the same time for us internally. So we meet with them on Monday. On Tuesday, they meet as a team to make a strategic decision that then powers the rest of the week. Then we meet again Wednesday and Thursday. Then we take everything back on Friday and Monday of the following week. We'll then translate those things into a homepage wireframe. We have a whole system for that. And then we share this live on Tuesday of the following week. And then between Tuesday and Friday at 5 p.m. Central Time, we're doing async revisions with the client on the homepage wireframe. So that right there is the whole sprint. So to me, that's like the far end of productized, where you have every single part is exactly mapped out with the amount of time, with exactly what the agenda will be, what you're going to do. It's a true program, right? If AI was good enough, we could probably turn it into software. So when you describe those 3 phases, to me, that feels significantly less productized, all things being equal, compared to like it's these 3 exact sessions with this exact deliverables and these exact steps. So for that, I think it makes more sense what you're saying about adding on these additional retainer stuff. But for us, with our business model, if I take one of our employees and say, okay, you run these two, and we have 2 slots each week. We have morning slots and we have afternoon slots for these sprints. So our one position consultant, her name's Sarah, we would love for her to be fully booked out 2 sessions per week, maybe 6 per month, and have like 1 month or 1 week off where we can like do catch up of different things. So I need her booked with 6 companies, let's say, per month in the morning slot and the afternoon slot. If she takes a retainer, she cannot do that anymore. So the whole system breaks down because it is so repeatable, productized week by week. And we're working with so many clients that any retainer work would have to be done by someone else. We would have to hire someone specific to handle retainer work of whatever that might look like. Same thing with me and my co-founder, Rob. We run these sprints the same way. If we take a retainer, we're basically saying no to much higher margin projects that are happening every single week. So the retainer makes sense if you think about it as 2 separate business lines. You've got the productized business, and then you have retainer, which is a separate business. So we've talked about starting that separate business, hiring more people, and being the retainer team. That's like, great. Once you've done the productized sprint with one of these people who run, that's all they do, then we're going to hand you off to this separate team of people and they're going to do retainer work with you. So I think you can do that. But most consultancies, especially the smaller ones, don't really have the bandwidth to run 2 separate businesses. So for us, we've prioritized the one specific business first. We want to see how big we can get it. If we start hitting some sort of growth walls and we need to expand, I think we'll revisit the conversation. But we keep like I was saying before, we keep raising prices. We do about 1.5 million a year in revenue at probably around 60% margin or so. So it is a nice lucrative business for our really small team, and it becomes more and more efficient over time. And each time that we increase prices, obviously that gets higher, and we haven't hit that growth wall yet. So I think that's how I would think about those 2 separate ideas, if that makes sense.
yeah, perfect sense. And some of those insights that you share, I applied. And I think I just need to work on some of the other things that I still need to customize the approach that I have and hire external people to help and so on. But you mentioned a couple of times positioning. And I know pricing is part of it, but what else people need to look into when they really want to stand out?
Yeah, I think there's a guy named David C. Baker. He runs his own firm that basically just does positioning for service providers and agencies and consultants. He has a podcast called Two Bobs. It's really really good, and they have a lot of really good context about this. So I would tell anyone to check that out. But if you think about it, you want to be specialized in a way that people would shop for a specific thing that you do. And so when people say I do growth, I don't know what that means, right? And so most companies are not shopping for growth. They're saying, do you know anyone who does LinkedIn ads? Or do you know anyone who does cold outbound? Or do you know anyone who can help me write my newsletter? So positioning for those specific use cases or categories of service providers, that's kind of step one. Like you need to be in a bucket. So for us, we do positioning, and there are many positioning experts out there. So once you put yourself in a category, you probably also want to pick some sort of segment that you want to specifically hone in on. Because if I say we do positioning and that's it, there's all sorts of people who want positioning who are not a good fit for us. We don't really do great work with B2C companies. We don't really do great work with, like, if you're a D2C direct to consumer product, it's not really our space. For us, we found our framework is really built for B2B software companies, usually ones that are selling enterprise software, and usually with sales and marketing teams as the way to get new customers. So saying we do positioning for B2B software companies, et cetera, all those different things, that's the next step, right? So you have a category for a specific group of people. Now you're already a lot smaller pool. If I'm a B2B person, I'm looking for someone who can do positioning. I've just shrunk it to a smaller pool of people. And then what makes us different? You have to have some level of differentiation within the other people in that same category. So for us, it's things like the fact that we are flat rate pricing, totally productized, and we've linked it with this homepage deliverable, which a lot of the people don't do. Most of the positioning experts are just selling strategy decks. That's it. You just get a deck and then you got to figure out what to do with it. Uh, there's a really big positioning consultant that we look up to named April Dunford. She, if you think about us within the space of positioning experts, she charges, I think, 80 grand for 3 days. We don't charge that much. We're significantly cheaper. So in some ways, she's the more expensive option. We're the more budget option. And she more focuses on the sales narrative of what is the people going to say in the sales call. We focus more on the homepage. So we've created some differentiation so that we don't compete with her at all. Like, we don't, like, I don't think we've had a single sales call out of 500 companies we worked with where they're like, we're trying to decide between you and April. Like, it's never happened. So what you want to do is you want to be very specialized for a specific group of people and have some sort of interesting angle, some sort of point of view differentiation that makes you stand out within that group. And then ideally, you've been sharing this POV and your expertise for a long time to the specific people you're trying to reach. Like, all of our content is geared towards B2B software companies. So if people have been following us, we've created credibility over time. And then we kind of, if they find themselves in that time where they're like, we want to refresh the homepage, we want to work on our positioning, make sure it makes sense, we're kind of the only name that comes up as an option.
And on that note, usually how long does it take to build that credibility? Because often the this part of building a personal brand, to putting yourself out there and build that trust over time, is something that puts a lot of people off from various reasons, from fears, limiting beliefs, and so on. And still, it's probably one of the best way, if not the best way, to build trust. For you, how long did it take to build this powerful brand that you have now?
We were posting for probably 9 months before we got a single client. And that was partially because we didn't even know what we wanted to sell. So we knew we wanted to sell something. We knew we wanted it to be productized. We knew we wanted it to be flat rate. We knew we wanted it to have a very specific deliverable. We had kind of the flavors, the idea, but we didn't know exactly what it was going to be. So we just started posting to find out what would people be interested in. So we did some posts about pricing models, that maybe we could do pricing consulting of some kind. We did posts about sales decks, or we did posts about all sorts of stuff that we thought about. At one point, I took a sales call with a guy around building a community, because it was a community management thing. We were, maybe we'll do that. So we had all these different ideas. We're trying it, and we basically stumbled into this positioning and homepages concept. And then once we started getting a little traction there, so from social media, right, on LinkedIn, then we were like, we should probably lean into that, started posting more about that. And again, it was like 9 months before we got clients. Now, it won't take that long if you pick sooner. So like my brother, his name's Vince. He comes from a very different background, not in tech. And he saw what I was doing and he was like, man, maybe I should start posting on LinkedIn and see if I can get a side hustle business. And he picked the things from day one. He was like, I want to do public speaking coaching for B2B software companies. And so he started posting about public speaking coaching. And I think he got his first client like significantly faster, probably in the first 2 or 3 months. So you can shrink that amount of time if you're willing to just pick something sooner. We didn't know what we wanted to pick. It took us longer. So we were kind of fumbling around for a lot of time. But I would say if you have an idea and you think, okay, this is what I want to sell and this is the group I want to sell to, I would think at minimum it takes a quarter. It's probably a 3 month investment before you will see anything. But again, you have to be posting things that are super valuable and are both valuable and demonstrating your expertise. So like the early stuff that we would post was auditing people's websites for free. We would just take someone's website, we'd make a cool post diagnosing it, why it was working, why it wasn't working from a positioning perspective. And then we would post those and then we tag the company, we tag the founder. Sometimes they'd be mad, sometimes they'd be happy. Sometimes we'd take 4 companies in the same category, put all their homepages right next to each other and be like, look, none of them look different than each other. These people need to figure out how to differentiate. And then sometimes the companies would be mad. Sometimes we would get clients from it. People would be like, oh, I'm one of those 4 companies. I want to look different. What should I do? So stuff like that, I think it's like where you can find publicly auditable assets and then post about it, right? We have another guy that we partner with a lot named Yakov, and he does PLG onboarding. So he will take people's onboarding flows and diagnose why they're working or not working, and then post about it. Again, it's like if you want to sell onboarding flow optimization, it's pretty simple what kind of content you need to do. You need to show people you know how to optimize the onboarding flow, right? So that's why I'm saying about like the specialization and the productization makes the content easy because you're like, that's what I'm going to post about. I need to prove people that I can do this thing. What kind of insights can I share about it? And my brother, who was posting about public speaking coaching, would like break down how to write a talk. He'd be like, this is what the beginning point should talk about. He would take and diagnose other people's talks. He would, respond to how people were writing things and would give all sorts of helpful suggestions and all sorts of frameworks. And now he is doing really well. He's getting a lot of clients, and he actually just left his full-time gig and is going to now do this full-time, his own business, like kind of how we spun off to do our own as well. So that's kind of the thought behind it.
It's very good when you hear it. But if I roll back the time and I was like, but I can serve all these people. Why should I go so focused and so on? And for all the reason that you mentioned, it makes so much sense because indeed, if you are known for certain thing, it's easier to position yourself, to create content, to build authority, and so on. And still, I see a lot of people like being so broad. And for example, I have an approach in which I focus or I, if you want, niche down on result that I bring rather than a specific industry or a specific segment. And that at least worked very well for me. But in the same time, I see people have different approaches and so on. So I like to see if someone that is listening to us, and let's say it's in the startup world, and let's be even more specific. They are in AI, and it's so much competition, so much hype around it, and so on. How they can truly stand out in that world where people are just sharing all the time about, oh my god, I just built this that solved that problem and that problem, but oh, there are 20 others that are doing the same thing, and so on. And especially in a fast-paced world like AI, maybe they don't have a couple of months to build that trust and so on before their probably startup fail.
Yeah.
How will you approach that?
Yeah. So if you're a startup, I think if you don't have a couple months, I think you're probably doomed, right? If you don't have 3 months to try to build pipeline, like I think it's over. This whole thing's done. A lot of these AI startups raise money, so they have longer runway. So that's one model, right? And then bootstrapping model is a different thought, right? Where's the money going to come from? A lot of people will start agencies and then eventually launch software out of the agency, right? And the agency is funding it. So there's going to be a period of time where you're unprofitable no matter what. Uh, that's just sort of the nature of software. So in general, it comes down to just the basic fact of how will people remember you? You want to be remembered. You want to get a spot in people's brains. I've done this exercise with other people, and we'll see if you give the same answers. If I ask you, what does Stripe do? What would you say if you had to say like a word or two?
Payment.
Payments. Are you familiar with the company Gong?
No.
Okay. Or let's think of another, Salesforce.
Yes.
What do they do?
Sales pipelines.
Yeah, or like CRM is what a lot of people will say. Uh, right there, right? You just said payments for Stripe. Stripe occupies that part in your brain. So anytime anyone says, I need a way to do payments, there's a company you can associate with payments in your brain. So you go, oh, Stripe does that. Maybe you should check out Stripe. Or, I need to figure out the sales pipeline thing. Oh, I should think of Salesforce. So specific places in people's brains that they can associate with you. Right now, if I say, what company do you think of when I say AI? Probably most people would say OpenAI, right? ChatGPT. Maybe they'd say Claude. So any new startup probably not going to win the AI word, right? Stripe has won the payments word. People think of them as the payments company. OpenAI, Anthropic, they kind of have the leading edge on AI. If I said vibe coding, you would think of Lovable. You would think of maybe Bolt. So what you're trying to do is find very specific things to own. What you will have noticed when you use the example you said, I was positioning myself more in an outcome that I drove. I didn't say any outcomes with any of those companies. And when I said what does Stripe do, you did not say they increase your revenue. You said payments, right? And I said, what does Salesforce do? You did not say get you more business. You said sales pipeline, right? So usually we are associating these companies with functional things, with what they do, not an outcome they drive. So any company that wants to have a place in customers' brains, any chance of having word of mouth needs to pick something specific at a functional level that their product does. So, there's a lot of AI platforms, and the only way they get remembered is if they have something specific you can associate. I think of Lovable as the vibe coding platform, right? I think of Sierra as the customer experience AI agent stuff. I think of Finn from Intercom, right, as AI agents for customer service. There's specific things I can associate from a functional level. So anyone who's in the AI space needs to say, what's the functional workflow that I'm going to support that people then can think of me for, in the same way that every single other B2B business has something functional that people associate with them. It's the only chance you have. And so you have to find where is their white space from a functional perspective that then they can go win. Or if they get crazy funding, they can go try to take over one of the big ones, right? Which is sort of like, the who is it? What's the AI search company? Perplexity. They're like, we're
Perplexity.
going to take over search. We're going after Google, right? They have tons of funding, and so they're like, we want to be the search company, and so they're going to go after them and try to beat Google at search. That's a strategy, right? But you have to be associated with something, and it's not going to be an outcome. It's going to be a functional workflow.
True. And if you wonder if, oh, but this space is already taken, when it comes to Stripe, they weren't the first ones. There were many others before them, and one glorious one, if you want it, it's PayPal, and still they overthrow it, and now PayPal is playing catch up. And yeah, and that's the thing. And I would like to ask you, like, once you identify that functionality, like, how you build that authority around it? Because often you hear this advice, and I wonder if you think it's the right approach to get one idea and to write about it in 1,000 ways. That still works into today's world, or
I think from a consulting perspective, it can, but again, it comes down to competition, right? If you pick something like, let's say you're like, I want when people think of me, I want to be thought of when people say sales. Oh, that's sales. That's owned by this person. Like, it's such a big, broad category. You're not going to win it. I could write about sales 1,000 different ways. I'm not going to become the salesperson who's like the expert on sales. So you have to probably shrink it down, right? Like Stripe is not the expert on money. It's specifically payments processing is what they really won, right? So, and with us, we are not the experts of marketing, right? That would be someone like, I don't know, Seth Godin, New York Times best-selling author, right? With 10, 15 different books that are like the number one marketing books. Great. I'm not going to be able to compete with that. I could be the industry expert in B2B, SaaS, startup, product positioning as it relates to the homepage. I could probably be the top expert in that. And you can look at certain metrics, and like me and my co-founder, if you when you narrow it down to that, we really are kind of the main experts of that. And so, same thing with startups, you have to think about what competition exists, and if you can compete in that, and if you cannot compete in that, you need to find an underserved segment that you could win, right? So, it goes back to like a lot of the early stuff from like the early 2000s, like lean startup and all these things that have kind of fallen out of favor. I think it was right. I think it's still right. Like you have to find an underserved group of people and say, I'm going to go build a business there. And the only weapon that startups have against the big companies is that they can focus on these smaller market opportunities that a big company just doesn't care to go after, right? There was that whole book called The Innovator's Dilemma, which is basically talking about how giant companies will not pursue these small opportunities because they're just too small. And it was like, if you're Apple and you're like, okay, how are we going to move the needle? Or I don't know, 2 trillion or whatever, however big their market cap is. They're not going to move the needle from pursuing some small opportunity that's only worth 50 million. They have to like make a car or like become a bank or something crazy where it's like, no, these have to be like massive bets we're making, where any little person like you or me making a $50 million idea is like, that's amazing. So Apple's not going to go and make this $50 million business. Maybe I could, because there's a $50 million market that is mad that this thing doesn't exist, and none of the big people will make it. So that's the only weapon startups have, unless they can get infinite funding, right? Unless you're Sam Altman or Elon Musk and you can go around and raise billions and billions of dollars, then okay, sure, then you can compete on the global stage against the big incumbents. But for the rest of us, the only thing we can do is find smaller markets to start with. And then the whole book of the Innovator's Dilemma thing is like, you can pursue these weird small markets that then could theoretically become massive markets. So like, why didn't Chase Bank create Stripe? Because this whole weird corner of the internet of payments processing just didn't feel like it was worth it. Now Stripe is worth what, 100 billion or something. Now the big companies are looking and be like, oh shoot, we should have done this. Or any of the car companies with Tesla, right? It was like, we don't want to do electric cars. Like nobody wants that. Elon's like, I think there's a market there, goes and builds it, and then every company's playing catch up and being like, oh shoot, we should have done it. So that's like the innovator's dilemma. That's the only weapon that we have as small fish in big ponds, is to find smaller ponds.
And the big question is, how do you find those bonds? Because it's often the hardest thing, I guess.
Yeah. And that's where you have to be steeped in some sort of world to find opportunities, right? Like that's why some of the best startups are vertical SaaS, right? Or vertical software. People who are in an industry and have seen that the industry is lacking this type of software and then making software for it. So, they work in, I don't know, HVAC or something for 20 years, and they're like, man, this is terrible that this thing doesn't exist. We see this problem every day. What if we could just build it and we could probably sell it to all the other people in our industry? So that type of stuff is always great. Like we think vertical software has a really strong advantage in the future, but like you have to be steeped in somewhere, and then that becomes kind of just a facet of entrepreneurship. If you're someone who's, I don't want to come up with something new and some new idea, it's like, great, go be an accountant. You don't have to come up with a new business. You can have a nice life. Pick one of the existing career paths. But if you want to come up with something new, make a new business, that's kind of just part of the deal.
100%. And I think that's kind of the beauty of it as well, because you're always in this creative state in which you try to innovate, try to find new ways of doing things. And it's also the reason why you don't get bored in this path of entrepreneurship. And personally, that's why I love it. And for those that are watching or listening right now and they resonate a lot with what you share, where they can get in touch with you in order to work with you guys.
Yeah, I would say you could always start with our LinkedIn's, follow us for a little bit, follow along with our content, and then if that feels like okay, I kind of agree with them from a point of view perspective, and it feels like you need help with positioning and you'd want to go beyond that, then I would say just our website's a good spot to do it. And see if we practice what we preach, see if you can understand what we do very clearly on our website and who we're for and all that type of stuff. If those answers are not clear to you, then don't work with us, right? But we try to be the clearest out there of what we do and who we're for. But yeah, usually I would say start with our content, because I think that's a good filter. Because some people are like, "Oh, I don't agree with any of this stuff," and it's like, "Great, don't don't work with us then."
That's a great point. And make sure you guys watching, listening, that the links are down below. And I want to conclude with something. If you still remember, to tell us what was your positioning when you guys already decide when you want who you want to serve, and how much that changed
Yeah,
to today.
at the very beginning, it was so broad. I think we said we help founders market hard to market products, which like cool phrase. What does that mean, right? What a founder of what type of startup? How big? How small? What type of products? What constitutes a hard to market product? What does market mean? Right? Are we writing ads? Are we making campaigns? Running stuff like that. So it was very broad, and then now it's much more narrow, right? And we've just basically really honed in on the exact specific service. A lot of the stuff that we've talked about already.
This was Anthony Pierri on Authority in the Wild. Thank you so much for tuning in.